After surviving experimental heart surgery, I landed exhausted at the airport, expecting my family. Instead, they told me to call an Uber, completely dismissing my fragile state. I just stood there, a strange calm washing over me. But then a voice called my name, and my entire life took an unexpected turn into something darker. This is just the beginning. Like, share, and let us know where you're listening from. The fluorescent lights of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport hummed with a detached indifference that mirrored Eleanor Vance's own emotional state. 3 weeks post-experimental cardiac surgery, she felt less like herself and more like a ghost inhabiting a borrowed body. Her usually vibrant silver hair was limp against her scalp, her already slender frame made brittle by a 12-pound weight loss, leaving her pale, exhausted, and profoundly anxious. Every breath felt like a conscious effort, every step a minor victory. She clutched the strap of her small carry-on bag, the world spinning slightly at the edges. Her phone buzzed in her hand, a lifeline she hoped would connect her to warmth, to home. She had already sent a text to the family group chat, a simple message announcing her arrival, hoping for the usual flurry of concerned responses, of competitive offers to pick her up. She deserved it, she thought, after what she had just endured. The first reply came from Valerie Hayes, her daughter-in-law. "We're too busy today, Eleanor. Just call an Uber." The words were an icy slap, delivered with the casual disregard of a grocery list. Eleanor blinked, rereading the text, her fingers trembling slightly. Too busy? For her? Before she could process the sting, her son, Marcus Hayes, chimed in, adding a layer of familiar exasperation. "Why don't you ever plan anything in advance, Mom?" The screen blurred. It was a profound crack, she realized, a fissure that went deeper than the surgical scar blossoming across her chest. This was a wound that bypassed flesh and bone, lodging itself directly into her soul. Her heart, newly mended and still fragile, ached with an unfamiliar, searing pain, far worse than any post-operative discomfort. She had deliberately downplayed the severity of her condition, the life-threatening nature of the experimental procedure. She'd minimized the risks, painted a picture of routine recovery, all to spare them worry, to avoid burdening her precious family. Now, standing amidst the indifferent throng of travelers, their indifference felt like a betrayal woven into the very fabric of her existence. Decades of unwavering support flashed before her eyes. The countless hours spent raising her grandchildren when Valerie insisted on returning to work, the substantial sum she'd poured into Marcus's law school tuition, the significant contribution to the down payment on their sprawling suburban home. Every sacrifice, every quiet act of love now felt like sand slipping through her fingers. A single defiant word formed in her mind, then found its way to her thumb. Okay. The message sent, Eleanor felt a curious shift within her. It was a subtle click, a realignment of purpose, a decision forming, cold and sharp, to change her life. But how? And to what end? Her gaze drifted over the bustling arrivals, past the smiling reunions, the hurried goodbyes. Then, almost on impulse, she opened another text thread. This one was far less frequently used, reserved for formal pleasantries. It belonged to Dr. Julian Thorne, her initial consulting physician, a man whose calming presence had guided her through the terrifying initial diagnosis. "Dr. Thorne," she typed, a strange sense of composure settling over her. "I'm back in Atlanta, albeit with some unexpected transportation issues. Just wanted to wish you well on Leo's birthday. Hope it's a wonderful day for him." It was a polite, almost detached message, a hint of her predicament, subtly veiled. The phone vibrated almost immediately. Julian Thorne. "Eleanor?" His voice, calm yet urgent, cut through the airport noise. "Where exactly are you in the airport? I just flew in from Zurich myself, surprisingly enough." Eleanor froze, stunned. The sheer coincidence was uncanny, a ripple in the fabric of her carefully constructed despair. "Terminal S," she managed, her voice a reedy whisper. "Gate A12. "Don't move," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. "My driver, Mr. Albright, is waiting for me. We'll be there in 15 minutes. Absolutely no protest, Eleanor. You've just had major cardiac surgery. The last thing you need is to struggle." His concern, starkly contrasting with her family's dismissal, felt like a sudden, unexpected warmth in the cavern of her chest. She looked at her reflection in the darkened glass of a nearby shop window, a pale, weary woman staring back. With a small, defiant gesture, she rummaged in her bag, found her lipstick, and carefully applied a touch of crimson to her lips. It was a small act, but in that moment, it felt like a declaration, a preparation for something unknown, something that had just begun to stir. Precisely 15 minutes after Dr. Julian Thorne's phone call, a sleek, obsidian Bentley glided to the curb, its powerful engine a barely audible purr. It stopped with an effortless grace that seemed almost deliberate, a silent promise of comfort in the chaotic airport environment. Mr. Albright, the driver, emerged first. Dressed impeccably in a crisp, dark uniform, his movements were precise and respectful as he opened the rear passenger door. He offered Eleanor a small, reassuring smile, his eyes holding a professional kindness. Then, Julian Thorne himself stepped out from the opposite side. He was taller than Eleanor remembered, his silver hair distinguished against his tan skin, his frame radiating an understated authority. But it was his eyes, kind yet penetrating blue, that truly caught her attention. They seemed to hold a deep understanding, a quiet empathy that she hadn't realized she was so desperately craving. He approached her, his steps unhurried, a gentle warmth emanating from him. "Eleanor," he said, his voice a rich baritone as he carefully took both of her hands in his. His touch was firm, not overly solicitous, but undeniably caring. "I've been wondering how the surgery went. I've been concerned." His words, simple yet profound, nearly broke her. The raw, genuine care in his voice was a stark, almost painful contrast to the cold dismissal she had received from Marcus and Valerie just moments before. It was as if a dam had cracked inside her, threatening to unleash a flood of unshed tears. She swallowed hard, forcing them back, unwilling to appear weak after everything she'd just overcome. Managing a fragile smile, Eleanor met his gaze. "It went as well as could be expected, Julian," she replied, her voice slightly rough. "I'm still here, aren't I?" Julian's eyes narrowed slightly, a perceptive flicker that told her he saw beyond her brave facade, beyond the practiced smile. He saw the exhaustion etched on her face, the faint tremor in her hands. "Yes, you are," he said softly, his grip tightening imperceptibly. "And I'm very glad of that fact." There was a sincerity in his tone that resonated deep within her. He then turned to Mr. Albright, a brief, silent exchange passing between them. "Mr. Albright, if you would be so kind as to handle Mrs. Vance's small suitcase with extreme care. She's just had major surgery and is still very much in recovery." The instruction was delivered with a quiet authority, a subtle reinforcement of her fragile state, a consideration her own family had utterly overlooked. Julian then extended his arm, a courteous, old-fashioned gesture that surprised Eleanor. She hesitated for a moment, suddenly self-conscious of her fatigue, her rumpled clothes. "I don't want to be a burden," she murmured, the words escaping before she could truly think. He leaned in slightly, his voice low and firm, meant only for her. "Eleanor, you could never be a burden, not to me. Now let's get you home, and you can tell me why your family wasn't here to pick you up themselves." The protective edge in his tone sent an unexpected warmth through her, a sensation she hadn't felt in a long, long time. It was a comfort that seeped into her bones, chasing away some of the lingering chill left by her family's abandonment. With a slight nod, she accepted his arm, allowing him to guide her toward the luxurious vehicle. Sliding into the plush, cool leather interior of the Bentley, Eleanor sank back against the headrest, closing her eyes for a moment. The scent of fine leather and something subtly sophisticated, perhaps cologne, filled the air. She imagined Marcus and Valerie going about their day, oblivious to her airport ordeal, oblivious to Julian's unexpected rescue. She wondered what their reaction would be if they knew. A faint, almost mischievous smile touched her lips. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that Julian, a man of subtle influence and unexpected connections, was about to make a single, innocuous social media post that would ignite a storm of frantic calls from her family, tearing through their carefully constructed indifference like wildfire. The sleek black Bentley carved a path of silent luxury through the bustling Atlanta traffic, a stark, opulent bubble separating Eleanor from the mundane world outside. Julian Thorne sat beside her in the spacious rear seat, his posture respectful yet attentive. He hadn't pressed her immediately about her family, allowing her a few moments of quiet respite, but his genuine concern was evident in the way he occasionally glanced at her, a silent question in his piercing blue eyes. Finally, as they glided past a blur of office buildings, he spoke, his voice gentle but firm. "Eleanor," he began, "you didn't quite answer my question earlier about your family not meeting you at the airport." Eleanor felt a familiar knot of defensiveness tighten in her stomach. She smoothed the fabric of her skirt, a small nervous gesture. "Oh, they're busy people, Julian," she deflected, attempting a casual tone. "Marcus is a partner at his firm now, you know. Very demanding. And Valerie's leading a huge campaign for her pharmaceutical company. They just have so much on their plates." Julian's gaze remained steady, his penetrating blue eyes seeing right through her carefully constructed excuses. "Busy, perhaps," he conceded, his voice carrying a subtle edge. "But not so busy, I would imagine, that they couldn't spare 30 minutes to pick up their mother after she's just undergone major cardiac surgery." The directness of his question made her flinch. She felt a blush creeping up her neck. "Well," she started, fumbling for words, "I didn't exactly tell them it was cardiac surgery, Julian. I just said it was a minor procedure, a little maintenance, you know." He shook his head slowly, a gentle reproof in his expression. "Eleanor," he said, his tone softening, "the experimental valve reinforcement you underwent is anything but minor. It was a life-saving, cutting-edge procedure with significant risks. Why would you downplay something so serious to your own family?" She sighed, a fragile sound escaping her lips. "I didn't want to disrupt everything with my problems," she admitted, the words a raw confession of a lifelong pattern. "They have so much going on. I didn't want to add to their stress. I've always tried not to be a burden." Julian's brow furrowed. "Your problem was life-threatening heart failure, Eleanor. That's not disrupting anything. That's a family emergency, a moment where they should have rallied around you, regardless of how busy they were." His words resonated with a painful truth she had long suppressed. There was a moment of silence as the car made a smooth turn. Then Julian leaned forward slightly, his next question catching her off guard. "Do they know who I am, Eleanor? Your family, I mean." She blinked, surprised by the shift in topic. "Valerie certainly does," she replied, a faint, wry smile touching her lips. "She works in pharmaceutical public relations, you know. Your name, it comes up in her world quite a bit. She once mentioned how much your endorsement means in the industry." A subtle tightening around Julian's jaw was almost imperceptible, but Eleanor, newly attuned to nuances, noticed it. "Ah," he said, the sound low, almost a hum. "And did she perhaps ever ask you to make an introduction?" Eleanor looked away, a fresh wave of embarrassment washing over her. She hinted at it a few times. Nothing direct, of course, but it was clear what she wanted." Julian paused, then a slow smile spread across his face, easing the tension that had gathered. It was a genuine smile, warm and reassuring. "I consider you a friend, Eleanor," he said, his blue eyes twinkling. "And friendship, true friendship, is something I value deeply." His words, the simple acknowledgement of their bond, unexpectedly moved her. "I consider you a friend too, Julian," she reciprocated, her voice imbued with a newfound strength. "Which is precisely why I wouldn't use that friendship for Valerie's professional gain. Not for anyone's, for that matter." He reached out, his hand briefly, gently covering hers, a silent gesture of affirmation. "Your integrity is refreshing, Eleanor," he murmured, his thumb brushing lightly over her knuckles. "Completely refreshing." Now, he changed the subject smoothly, the moment passing. "Tell me more about the specifics of your surgery. I'm keen to understand the full scope of your recovery." They fell into a detailed discussion about her procedure, the mechanics of the experimental valve, and the intricacies of her recovery. Eleanor found herself talking freely, openly, in a way she hadn't with anyone else, her medical details interspersed with casual anecdotes about the hospital staff. As they approached her modest suburban home, a familiar sense of quiet dread began to settle over her. The thought of returning to the solitude, the quiet emptiness that awaited her within those walls, now felt acutely painful after the unexpected warmth of Julian's company. The Bentley pulled up to the curb. Before Eleanor could even reach for the door handle, Julian was speaking again, his tone firm. "I'm coming in with you, Eleanor," he stated, his eyes meeting hers. "Doctor's orders. We need to make sure you are properly settled, and I need to assess your immediate environment for your recovery." The doctor's orders was clearly a polite facade, a gentle excuse. What she heard was a promise of continued presence, a brief reprieve from the loneliness she feared. A small, hopeful spark ignited within her, pushing back against the encroaching shadow of her empty house. The world, it seemed, was still full of unexpected turns. Mr. Albright expertly maneuvered the Bentley into Eleanor's modest driveway, the sleek vehicle looking almost out of place against the backdrop of her quaint suburban home. He emerged first, ever the professional, opening her door and offering a steadying arm. Eleanor, still a little unsteady, gratefully accepted his support as he guided her up the short path to her front door. Julian followed closely behind, her small suitcase seeming feather-light in his hand. Stepping inside, Eleanor felt a familiar wave of self-consciousness wash over her. Her home, while meticulously kept, was undeniably modest, a comfortable but far cry from the sophisticated elegance she imagined Julian's own surroundings to be. The floral sofa, the well-worn rug, the slightly chipped ceramic mugs in the kitchen, they all seemed to scream unpretentious in comparison to the luxury she had just experienced. Julian, however, moved through the living room with an air of genuine appreciation. He paused by a watercolor landscape hanging on the wall. "This is lovely, Eleanor," he commented, his voice warm. A real sense of calm. "And this," he gestured to a vibrant quilted throw, draped over the back of an armchair, "is exquisite. Did you make this?" Eleanor, disarmed by his sincerity, managed a small smile. "Yes, years ago, a small hobby." "A talent," he corrected gently. He then turned to Mr. Albright. "Mr. Albright, if you would be so kind as to procure some essentials for Eleanor. Fresh fruit, lean protein, some herbal teas, and a good quality broth. Nothing processed, mind you. Proper nutrition is paramount for recovery." His instructions were delivered with an imperious yet kind authority, a clear sign that he was taking charge. Mr. Albright simply nodded, pulling out a small pad to meticulously note down Julian's dictates before discreetly excusing himself. "Now tea," Julian declared, moving toward her kitchen with surprising familiarity. He opened a cupboard, finding her collection of mismatched mugs with an ease that belied his unfamiliarity with the space. "My mother always believed in the healing power of a good cup of tea," he mused, as he set the kettle to boil, "especially after a journey or a significant life event." The intimate normalcy of Julian Thorne, renowned surgeon and man of apparent wealth, standing in her humble kitchen making tea, created a peculiar, almost domestic intimacy that both startled and comforted Eleanor. It felt strangely right, like a missing piece clicking into place. Just as the kettle began to whistle, her phone, which she'd forgotten she was holding, vibrated with an insistent urgency. Then again, and again. She glanced down. Her eyes widened. 48 missed calls, 32 texts, all from Marcus and Valerie. The screen was a chaotic collage of their names demanding attention. Julian, observing her expression, paused with the steaming mugs in his hands. "Is something wrong, Eleanor?" he asked, a knowing glint in his blue eyes. "Your family suddenly seems very eager to reach you, wouldn't you say?" As if on cue, a social media alert popped up on her screen. It was a notification from Julian's own profile. She clicked on it, her heart thumping with a mix of trepidation and curiosity. There, an hour ago, was a photo. It was taken in the Bentley, a discreet yet unmistakable shot of Julian's hand protectively under her elbow as they were leaving the airport, her own face visible, if a little pale, but undeniably content. The caption beneath it read, "So good to unexpectedly reunite with a truly courageous patient, Eleanor Vance, after her successful cutting-edge cardiac surgery. Her resilience is an inspiration. Wishing her a swift and complete recovery." Thousands of likes scrolled past, hundreds of comments, and then there it was, glaringly obvious, a comment from Valerie Hayes. "Dr. Thorne, that's my mother-in-law. We've been trying to reach you for months regarding Meridian's Cardio Restore project. Please reach out." Another more recent one. Eleanor, why aren't you answering your phone? Call us now. Eleanor looked up from her phone, her gaze locking with Julian's. Did you know, she asked, her voice barely a whisper, about Valerie trying to reach you professionally? Julian carefully set down her tea, his expression unreadable for a moment, but before a faint, satisfied smile touched his lips. Let's just say, Eleanor, he began, his voice low and rich, your daughter-in-law's reputation in the pharmaceutical PR world precedes her. She is persistent. And now, it seems, she's discovered a connection she never knew existed, one that she no doubt believes will open all sorts of doors for her. His smile deepened, a blend of satisfaction and, she suspected, a healthy dose of mischief. Eleanor, I believe your phone will be quite busy for the foreseeable future. Perhaps, he suggested, gesturing toward the device still vibrating in her hand, we should silence it for a while and simply enjoy our tea. He watched her, his eyes twinkling. The storm, she realized, had just begun, and for the first time in a long time she felt a thrill, a strange anticipation, rather than dread. If you're captivated by Eleanor's story of resilience and unexpected twists, don't go anywhere. Make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs a good story, and hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. By the time evening settled over Eleanor's quiet suburban street, the relentless buzzing of her phone had taken on a frantic, almost desperate quality. Her missed calls from Marcus and Valerie had doubled, pushing past 90. The texts, which she finally brought herself to scroll through, told a revealing story. They began with feigned concern. Mom, where are you? Are you okay? Quickly escalating to thinly veiled demands. Mom, why aren't you answering? Dr. Thorne posted about you. And culminating in outright panic. Mom, is Dr. Thorne still with you? We need to talk to him about Meridian's project. Not a single message truly focused on her actual well-being, her recovery, or the trauma she had just survived. It was all about Julian. Just as she was contemplating silencing the device indefinitely, a sharp, insistent ring pierced the evening air. The doorbell. She sighed a deep, weary sound, but a new resolve stiffened her spine. She knew who it was. When she opened the door, Marcus and Valerie stood on her porch, looking exactly as she expected. Still in their pristine, if now slightly rumpled, work clothes, they exuded an agitated energy, their faces a mixture of manufactured concern and barely concealed annoyance. Mom, we've been trying to reach you for hours, Marcus exclaimed, stepping forward, his voice loud, attempting to project filial worry. He tried to embrace her, but Eleanor subtly sidestepped him. Eleanor met his gaze calmly, her voice steady. I was resting, Marcus. Doctor's orders. After cardiac surgery, one needs proper rest. Valerie, who had been peering over Marcus's shoulder, snapped her head up, her eyes wide with a sudden, sharper focus. Cardiac surgery? She repeated, a note of disbelief, almost accusation in her tone. Eleanor, you told us it was a minor procedure, a little something they needed to fix. Eleanor allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile to touch her lips. Well, it was minor in that I survived it, Valerie. She walked slowly, deliberately into her living room, sinking into the familiar comfort of her armchair, forcing them to follow her inside. I had experimental cardiac valve reinforcement surgery, she explained, her voice remarkably even, considering the gravity of her words. There was a 40% chance I wouldn't survive it. A stunned silence fell over the room. Marcus looked genuinely shocked, his face paling. Valerie, however, ever the strategist, quickly recovered, her eyes darting from Eleanor's pale face to the small, colorful pill dispenser on the coffee table. Why didn't you tell us it was so serious, she pressed, her tone edged with indignation, as if Eleanor's choice to withhold information was the true offense. Eleanor merely raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something new, a quiet defiance in her eyes. Would it have mattered, Valerie? You were too busy to pick me up from the airport after what I told you was a minor procedure. Would knowing it was high-risk, life-threatening surgery have changed anything? Marcus visibly winced, his shame palpable. Of course it would have, Mum, he insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. We would have been there. Eleanor looked at her son, her gaze unwavering. Would you, Marcus? She challenged softly, but the question landed like a stone. The way you were there for my knee replacement? Or when I had pneumonia last year? Or the time I broke my wrist and had to call a neighbor for a ride to the ER? Each question was a quiet indictment, a catalog of past neglects that now seemed to rise from the shadows. Valerie, sensing the ground shifting beneath them, swiftly changed tactics. Her gaze, sharp and assessing, landed on Eleanor. Dr. Thorne seems very attentive, she observed, her voice now laced with suspicion. You never mentioned you were such close friends with someone of his standing. Eleanor felt a cold clarity wash over her. It was as if a fog had finally lifted, revealing Valerie's transparent motives. We became acquainted during my initial consultations, she stated factually, her voice devoid of emotion. He's a compassionate physician who takes genuine interest in his patients' well-being. A rare quality, it seems. Valerie's lips thinned. Compassionate enough to pick you up personally in his Bentley? That seems beyond professional courtesy, Eleanor. Almost inappropriate given his reputation. Eleanor's quiet words landed precisely, striking with far more impact than any shout could have. Perhaps he simply recognized that I needed assistance when my own family did not. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Valerie finally dropped the pretense, her true agenda spilling out. His endorsement, Eleanor, she blurted, her voice low and urgent, could transform Meridian's new cardiovascular drug program. It would put us on the map. You have no idea what this connection could mean for my career, for Marcus's future, for all of us. Eleanor looked at her daughter-in-law, a faint, knowing smile touching her lips as she recalled Julian's hand gently covering hers. His words about integrity. My relationship with Julian is personal, Valerie, she said, her voice firm, unwavering. It is not for professional leveraging. As if to punctuate her words, her phone chimed softly from the coffee table. She glanced down. It was a text from Julian. Eleanor, it read, feeling up to dinner tomorrow evening? There's a wonderful little Italian place not far from you. My treat. A new exhilarating chapter, she realized, had just begun. Eleanor stood before the full-length mirror, turning slowly, assessing the simple black dress that had been a reliable staple in her wardrobe for years. It was elegant, understated, and comfortable, all the things she usually sought in clothing. But tonight, a new question flickered in her mind. Was this a date? At 67, with a newly mended heart and a life spent largely in the shadow of others' needs, the idea of romance felt both absurd and intriguingly fresh. The possibilities, however faint, stirred something within her that had long been dormant. Precisely at 7 o'clock, the familiar hum of the Bentley announced Mr. Albright's arrival. He was on time to the minute, as always. Julian awaited her in the back seat, a vision of refined elegance in a perfectly tailored dark suit, his silver hair catching the fading light. He smiled warmly as she settled beside him. Eleanor, you look absolutely lovely, he said, his voice soft, his gaze appreciative. That color suits you wonderfully, and your silver hair. It's quite striking tonight. His specific compliment, noticing the subtle highlights she had added, made her blush like a schoolgirl, a sensation she hadn't felt in decades. Thank you, Julian, she murmured, a genuine smile gracing her lips. I must admit, I'm still feeling the lingering effects from yesterday's family confrontation. The words were out before she could censor them, a reflection of the comfortable ease she was beginning to feel in his presence. Julian's expression sharpened, a subtle tightening around his eyes. My social media post created quite a stir, didn't it? He observed, a hint of something unreadable in his tone. He paused, then continued. Eleanor, I should tell you, that post was a strategic revelation. Sometimes one must introduce information to clarify complex situations. Eleanor looked at him, her gaze direct. You knew exactly who Valerie was, didn't you? And what she wanted, even before I told you. It wasn't an accusation, but a simple statement of fact. He met her gaze, his expression candid. Yes, he admitted, his voice low. Valerie Hayes has a formidable reputation in the pharmaceutical PR world. She's known for her relentless pursuit of high-profile connections, often prioritizing influence over actual substance. Her attempts to reach me through various professional channels have been persistent, to say the least. He leaned back slightly, adjusting his cuff. I didn't want to taint your family relationships with my professional judgments, Eleanor. But I was certainly curious about the nature of your connection to her. They arrived at a discreet, private dining club, its entrance unassuming, its interior exuding an air of quiet sophistication. Julian, ever thoughtful, gently guided her to a secluded table, already having made arrangements for them. He ordered for both of them, choosing heart-healthy options with a subtle grace that didn't feel restrictive. As their drinks arrived, he raised his glass, his eyes sparkling. "To new beginnings, Eleanor," he toasted softly, "and to unexpected connections." "Julian," Eleanor began, a question that had been weighing on her finally finding voice. "Why did you respond to my text, out of the blue, at the airport?" He set his glass down, his expression becoming serious, reflective. "The human heart, Eleanor," he began, his voice taking on a profound quality, "is an extraordinary thing, resilient yet so incredibly vulnerable. And some people carry burdens without complaint, enduring in silence. I see it every day in my profession. Your message, simple as it was, hinted at that resilience and at a need that wasn't being met." He leaned forward slightly, his blue eyes holding hers with an intense, unblinking focus. "My professional interest in your case, Eleanor, rapidly evolved into a more personal concern." His intensity, the directness of his gaze, made Eleanor look away, a shy flush rising to her cheeks. She felt a warmth spreading through her, a mixture of gratitude and something else, something she couldn't quite name. To break the emotional intensity, she changed the subject. "How is Leo?" she asked, recalling his son's birthday. "Your son, the humanitarian architect?" Julian's expression softened instantly. "Leo is doing wonderfully. He's currently in South America, working on sustainable housing projects. He speaks about you, Eleanor, differently than he speaks about my other patients. He was deeply affected by your courage, your quiet determination." Just as Eleanor was about to respond, Julian's phone buzzed with an insistent urgency. He glanced at the screen, his face immediately clouding with concern. "Forgive me, Eleanor," he said, already standing, his apologies heartfelt. "An urgent patient emergency. I have to go." He pressed a quick, gentle kiss to her cheek, his lips surprisingly warm, his touch lingering for just a moment. "I'll have Mr. Albright take you home. I'll call you tomorrow, I promise." Eleanor watched him go, a peculiar mix of disappointment and fluttering excitement in her chest. She remained at the table, savoring a delicate lemon tort Julian had apparently pre-ordered for her, a final thoughtful gesture. The evening had ended abruptly, but the warmth of his presence, the soft kiss, lingered. Just then, her phone chimed. A text from Valerie. "Enjoyed your dinner, Mom? Heard Julian had to make an emergency exit. What a pity. Guess some connections are harder to keep than others." Eleanor stared at the message, a cold dread washing over the warmth she had just felt. How could Valerie possibly know where she had dined, or about Julian's emergency departure? A shiver, colder than any autumn breeze, traced its way down her spine. The morning after her dinner with Julian, Valerie arrived at Eleanor's doorstep, armed with a peace offering of artisanal coffee and a box of freshly baked scones. Her smile was a little too bright, her tone overly solicitous, all signs pointing to a carefully orchestrated fresh start that Eleanor knew, with chilling certainty, was entirely focused on leveraging her connection to Julian. Eleanor didn't waste time on pleasantries. She accepted the coffee, but her eyes, now sharper, met Valerie's directly. "How did you know I was at the Claremont last night, Valerie?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Valerie blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, just a coincidence, Eleanor," she stammered, recovering quickly. "A colleague of mine happened to be dining there. He saw you and Dr. Thorne leaving. Small world, isn't it?" Eleanor merely nodded, a slight curve to her lips. "An interesting coincidence indeed," she mused, "especially since your colleague also seemed to know about Julian's emergency departure. He must have had quite the vantage point, an excellent hearing." The unspoken accusation hung in the air, thick and undeniable. Valerie flushed, her practiced composure cracking. She attempted to pivot. "Mom, look, we were just concerned about you. Family reasons." "Not Meridian reasons?" Eleanor interjected, her gaze unwavering. Valerie's jaw tightened. "Of course not. We care about you, Eleanor." But the protest felt hollow, already exposed. Eleanor leaned back, observing her daughter-in-law. Julian and I had a very insightful conversation last night, she began, her voice casual, almost conversational. He mentioned cardio restore, of course, and its somewhat mixed results in clinical trials. He also mentioned that he was quite familiar with your rather persistent attempts to contact him regarding the project. Valerie's face paled, the last vestiges of her feigned concern draining away. Her eyes, usually so calculating, widened with a flash of raw anger. "You told him?" she hissed, the carefully constructed facade crumbling. "Do you have any idea what this could do to my professional reputation? To our family's financial security? Meridian is a huge client." Eleanor looked at her, a profound sadness mixing with her growing resolve. "So that's why you're suddenly so interested in my well-being," she stated, the realization solidifying in her mind. "Not because I nearly died, but because you fear I might damage your professional ambitions with Dr. Thorne." She rose slowly from her armchair, her posture imbued with a quiet dignity that seemed to deflate Valerie's aggressive stance. "My value to this family," Eleanor said, her voice clear and strong, "has always been measured by what I can provide, by what I can do for you, not by who I am as a person or the life I almost lost." Just then her phone chimed. It was Julian. An invitation. He was attending a symphony gala tomorrow evening, a major fundraising event benefiting cardiac research. He thought she might enjoy it and that her presence would be particularly fitting. A long, dormant flutter of anticipation, not unlike the quickening of her mended heart, began within her. She typed a quick reply, accepting the invitation. Then she turned to Marcus, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Marcus," she said, "I have plans tomorrow evening. Important plans." Immediately after they left, Eleanor sent another text to Julian. "Julian," she wrote, "just a heads up. Expect some professional overtures from Meridian at the gala. Valerie has made it clear she sees our connection as a professional opportunity for her." His reply came swiftly. "I'm counting on it, Eleanor. Some situations, I find, benefit from direct confrontation in the proper setting." He added with a touch of charming formality, "I also look forward to seeing you in formal attire. I have a feeling it will be quite something." The next evening, just as the sun began to set, a different car, a discreet black sedan, pulled into Eleanor's driveway. Out stepped a man named Samuel, impeccably dressed, followed by two women, Colette, a stylist, and Gianna, a makeup artist. They carried an entire boutique's worth of evening wear, their presence transforming Eleanor's living room into a luxurious dressing suite. Colette, with an artist's eye, immediately gravitated towards an emerald green silk gown. As Eleanor tried it on, the fabric shimmied and draped, flattering her slender frame in a way she hadn't known was possible. "This is the one, Eleanor," Colette declared, her voice filled with professional certainty. Gianna, meanwhile, worked magic with subtle makeup, enhancing Eleanor's remarkable bone structure, making her eyes sparkle. As Samuel buttoned Julian's driver's side door open later, he leaned in, his voice low. "I have never seen the doctor take such a personal interest, Mrs. Vance," he confessed, a subtle hint of admiration in his tone. "Nor have I ever been dispatched with a full styling team for a guest." Moments later, Julian arrived, breathtaking in a perfectly fitted tuxedo. When he saw Eleanor, he paused, his blue eyes widening with an undeniable appreciation. "Eleanor," he breathed, his gaze sweeping over her, lingering for a moment. "You are absolutely breathtaking." His words, his gaze, made her feel truly seen, truly beautiful, for the first time in perhaps her entire life. This wasn't just a gala, she realized. This was a statement, and the night it promised was just beginning. The symphony hall glowed, an architectural marvel illuminated against the night sky, its entrance transformed into a vibrant red carpet spectacle. Flashbulbs erupted like distant lightning as the Bentley pulled up, photographers jostling for position. Julian, ever the gentleman, emerged first, offering Eleanor his hand. In her emerald green gown, with her silver hair styled elegantly and her face subtly enhanced, Eleanor felt a thrill she hadn't known she possessed. Julian guided her, a protective hand at the small of her back, through the throng of reporters and socialites. He paused for a deliberate photo, his arms settling around her waist. an unmistakably personal, intimate gesture that spoke volumes without a single word. She felt the warmth of his touch, the strength of his presence, and a sense of belonging she hadn't anticipated. Inside, amidst the opulent grandeur of the reception, Julian moved with the ease of a man completely at home in such circles. He introduced Eleanor simply as, "My guest this evening," a subtle smile playing on his lips as he clearly enjoyed the murmurs of societal speculation that rippled through the crowd. It wasn't long before Valerie and Marcus materialized, their faces a mixture of forced smiles and barely concealed agitation. Valerie, ever opportunistic, smoothly attempted to leverage what she clearly perceived as a family connection. "Dr. Thorne," she began, her voice sugary sweet, "it's so wonderful to see you again. And with Eleanor, my mother-in-law, you know. We're practically family." She extended a hand, clearly angling for an introduction to Julian's professional circle. Julian, however, cut her off, politely but with an undeniable firmness that brooked no argument. "Actually, Valerie," he said, his blue eyes holding hers with a cool, unyielding gaze, "I'm not here with family tonight. I'm here with my date." The word date hung in the air, a small, explosive charge. Valerie's jaw dropped, her perfectly painted smile visibly cracking. Marcus, standing slightly behind her, stared at Eleanor as if she were a complete stranger, a woman he had never truly known. Julian continued, his voice resonating with an authority that silenced any further protest. "And while I appreciate your enthusiasm, Valerie, my personal relationship with Eleanor does not, and will not, extend to professional connections with her relatives or their respective companies. I hope that's clear." The tension in the air became almost suffocating. Just then, a vision of elegance in sapphire blue swept toward them. "Julian, darling," a melodic voice chimed, "there you are. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten me entirely." It was Victoria Caldwell. Well, Julian's ex-wife, an elegant woman with a mischievous twinkle in her eyes. She offered Julian a cheek to kiss, then turned to Eleanor, her smile genuinely warm. "And who is this lovely woman?" she asked, her gaze appreciative. "Julian never brings dates to these functions. You must be quite special." Her arrival, a timely intervention, felt like a rescue. Seated at a prominent table near the stage, Eleanor glanced at Julian, a new understanding dawning on her. He had strategically anticipated this entire evening. "Julian," she murmured, "this whole event, your post." Valerie's reaction. "You set this up, didn't you? To deal with Valerie and Meridian." He met her gaze, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Diana Reynolds, Valerie's boss at Meridian, has been attempting to manipulate a connection to me for months, through increasingly inappropriate channels," he confessed, his voice low. "Learning of your relationship to her, Eleanor, created it an opportune moment to address that situation definitively and publicly, in a setting where my position could not be misunderstood." "And the date declaration?" she asked, a knot of nervousness tightening in her stomach. "Was that strategic too?" He reached across the table, taking her hand gently in his. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, sending a shiver through her. "That, Eleanor," he said, his blue eyes warm and sincere, "was entirely heartfelt. I would be honored if you would consider this our first official date." Later in the ladies' room, Eleanor found herself face to face with Valerie. "Eleanor," Valerie began, her voice now stripped of its earlier bravado. You can't possibly be serious about him. This is all just a game for you, isn't it? To get back at us?" Eleanor looked at her daughter-in-law, her expression unyielding. "My personal life, Valerie," she stated calmly, "is not and never will be a networking opportunity for you. That is my boundary. Understand it." Valerie, disarmed by Eleanor's new strength, actually sagged a little. "He really likes you, doesn't he?" she said, her voice tinged with a strange mix of disbelief and grudging respect. "I mean, you're older, less polished. It just doesn't make sense." Eleanor merely smiled, a knowing, quiet smile. "Sometimes, Valerie," she replied, her voice soft but firm, "the most valuable things aren't obvious at first glance, and often they're the ones you've overlooked entirely." After the concert, as Julian was helping her into the Bentley, his phone rang, a familiar, urgent tone, another patient emergency. He sighed, a hint of genuine disappointment in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor," he said, his voice regretful. Duty calls. He leaned in, his gaze tender, and this time his kiss landed squarely on her lips, a soft, lingering touch that sent a jolt through her. "I'll call you tomorrow," he promised, his eyes holding hers for a long moment before he disappeared into the night. Eleanor, breathless and dazed, touched her lips, a silent testament to a night that had irrevocably changed everything. The Bentley, a silent leviathan, glided through the quiet suburban streets, returning Eleanor to her modest home. The dazzling echoes of the Gala still resonated within her, a symphony of newfound confidence and unexpected connections. Julian, his presence a comforting warmth beside her, radiated a quiet satisfaction. But as Mr. Albright turned into her driveway, Eleanor noticed a faint, anxious light glowing from within her living room window. They approached cautiously, the elegant crunch of their steps on the gravel unnaturally loud in the hushed night. Before Julian could even reach for the doorbell, the door swung open, revealing Chloe, her granddaughter. Chloe, in her pajamas, her bright, honest eyes wide with a mixture of worry and defiance, looked like a lone sentry. "Grandma," she breathed, then glanced accusingly at Julian. "I just Ubered over. My parents have been acting really weird, really controlling." Chloe, ever direct, didn't waste a moment. She looked squarely at Julian, her brow furrowed with serious intent. "Are you serious about my grandma?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the night air. "Because she's been lonely for like forever, even when my parents were around. And if you hurt her, Dr. Thorne, I know people who can hack your medical files. Seriously." Julian, taken aback for a split second, then offered a genuine, reassuring smile. He met Chloe's intense gaze with a steady one of his own. "Chloe," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "my interest in your grandmother is entirely serious, and it has absolutely nothing to do with business. I assure you of that." The next morning, a text from Marcus had summoned Eleanor to a family dinner at his and Valerie's home. Eleanor knew it for what it was, an intervention. The table was set with uncharacteristic formality, the atmosphere thick with manufactured concern. "Mom," Marcus began, his voice strained, "we're worried about you. You've been through so much with the surgery. This Dr. Thorne, he's a very prominent man. We just don't want to see you taken advantage of in your vulnerable state." Valerie, ever the polished manipulator, chimed in. "It's for your own good, Eleanor. We just want to make sure you're protected. Connections like his can be complicated." Just as Eleanor prepared to respond, a voice cut across the table. "Oh, please," Chloe scoffed, rolling her eyes. She had, much to Valerie's visible annoyance, insisted on being present. "You're not worried about Grandma. You're worried about losing your connection to Dr. Thorne for Meridian. I heard you talking about leveraging her. You literally called her a tool to get to him." Eleanor looked at her granddaughter, a surge of warmth and pride filling her. Then she turned to Marcus and Valerie, her expression calm, her voice clear and resonant. "Chloe is right," she stated, her words landing with a chilling precision. "For too long, my value to this family has been entirely transactional. What I could provide, money, child care, an unquestioning presence, never simply who I am." She stood then, her dignity radiating, casting a new, formidable shadow over the expensive dining table. "I am reclaiming my autonomy, my time, my choices," she declared, her voice unwavering. "And that includes my relationship with Julian. I will not justify it, and I certainly will not apologize for it." Marcus's face contorted with a mixture of shock and genuine fear. "Mom," he stammered, "we don't want to lose you." Eleanor met his gaze, her heart aching for the boy he once was, but her resolve unyielding. "You're not losing me, Marcus," she assured him softly. "You're just meeting a version of me you haven't had to deal with before, a version that finally understands her own worth." Later that evening, after a long, heartwarming call with Julian, Eleanor returned home to find her porch transformed. Dozens of LED candles, flickering with a warm, inviting glow, lined the path and the steps, turning the ordinary space into something magical. And there, standing amidst the luminous quiet, was Julian. He walked towards her, his blue eyes alight, and took both of her hands in his. "A celebration, Eleanor," he murmured, his voice rich and low. "Of courage, of new beginnings, of a remarkable woman who is finally claiming her rightful place." He drew her into a gentle embrace, the warmth of his body a comforting anchor. Then he leaned in, his lips finding hers in a tender, lingering kiss. It was unexpected, undeniably romantic, and in that moment, 18 years of widowhood simply evaporated. The loneliness, the quiet resignation, the subtle weight of neglect, all replaced by a sensation of profound connection, of being truly cherished. Eleanor, at 67, her heart mended and now overflowing, realized her experimental surgery hadn't just saved her life. It had become a prescription for her rebirth. She wasn't just recovering, she was stepping into a life richer, more authentic, and more vibrantly her own than she had ever dared to imagine. Her story, she knew, had just truly begun. Eleanor's journey, sparked by an act of unexpected family neglect, transformed her from a woman resigned to the shadows into a beacon of self-worth and quiet power. Her minor procedure became a major catalyst, peeling back layers of sacrifice to reveal a fierce, deserving spirit. Julian Thorne's timely intervention wasn't just a rescue, it was the beginning of a profound late-life romance, challenging societal norms and proving that true happiness and respect are never bound by age or past disappointments. Through the manipulations of her daughter-in-law and the reluctant understanding of her son, Eleanor found her voice, set her boundaries, and chose a path of radical authenticity, surrounded by genuine care. Her rebirth was a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to reclaim joy, to redefine family, and to embrace a second chance at a truly fulfilling life. Eleanor, once trembling at the Cleveland airport, facing digital silence and a harsh dismissal from her family, found her very survival question. The responses from Diana and Philip had cut deeper than the surgeon's scalpel, reflecting a lifetime of her self-worth being tied to their needs. She had arrived home after a surgery that gave her only a 60% chance of seeing another Christmas, only to be met with their cold indifference. Yet that profound neglect became the unlikely catalyst for her rebirth. Julian Thorne's unexpected kindness, his strategic support, and his genuine admiration ignited a dormant fire within her. From that initial sting of betrayal, Eleanor rose, not just physically recovered, but emotionally revitalized. She confronted the transactional nature of her family ties, asserting her autonomy and demonstrating that her value was intrinsic, not conditional. The tender kiss on her porch, amidst the glow of candlelight, wasn't just a romantic gesture. It was the affirmation of a woman who, at 67, had finally claimed her rightful place, proving it's never too late to embrace a life brimming with genuine connection and self-love. Her story, once steeped in quiet sorrow, now sang with triumph.